on the tracking through the work order system.
And that has been implemented.
Mm-hmm.
So there's we print on the work order on one side and then the tracking tool on the back side.
Yeah.
And so they use that and turn it in. And there's also a coding for where the work order was it a distributions, a collections, so that we'll be able to at some point get a trend on how much time we're spending in each area.
Any feedback from staff at this point?
No.
Okay.
No. They seem to have accepted it fine, so.
Good.
I like the idea of them, for example, not having to write reports, but just tick boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Because on social services, that writing these reports was just onerous. And it started small and can grow big. So.
Someone has a dog.
Jennifer, are you at home with dogs? Busted! Leave it up to you.
No travel money for you.
Would you tell the dogs that the public comment period has already passed? And, but
I don't like, no, he's coming in right now and looking at me like I'm insane. So don't worry about it.
We say Molly has got something to say.
I got a black cloud hanging over my head.
Why?
No, no,
Because I'm
no.
always late.
No, look at your
Cut your
treats.
hair.
I did. Good. That's not why I was late.
Good morning.
okay, everybody's here now because Jennifer's dogs are here and Kyle is here. So, like,
Yeah.
except for Parvin.
So, C. Oh, and
Yeah,
this
shall
is
we
good
move
because this is
on,
Kyle's
AJ?
interest.
Yeah, I think so. We
I beg your
also we
pardon.
talked a little bit about just the time clock for how people are filling out their time on their time cards, and I think it's working pretty well. But Stephen, did you guys look into getting a time clock for time in and time out?
That's still in process.
Okay.
AJ, I think
So that was the other takeaways, and again, I thought it was I was pleasantly surprised with the level of tracking that Stephen has in place for many things, by facility and for water quality issues, and he's got volumes of books with tracking data. So I was pleased, but I think we made some important improvements, and I really think Lindsay's time with Joanne was very well spent.
Great.
And I think Joanne benefited tremendously.
That's wonderful.
So yeah, that was actually the other piece that I was curious about, was whether or not Lindsay had any observations about administrative. We focus a lot on operations, and I think maybe we haven't, that we also ought to just be mindful of really asking about the administrative side and being sure that that is, obviously the interface is important. But anyway, any comments from Lindsay on things that we could look at, improve in that?
Well, one of the comments was that Joanne needs to get some Cassell training, and one of the major, we met with staff on this, and Stephen and Joanne. One of Lindsay's major, I wouldn't say concerns is the issue, but she had a lot of input on the meter reading, the timing for the reading and getting it back to Joanne. So we talked through the process, not only with Stephen and Joanne, but also Justin, so that everybody was on the same page about what needs to get done and by what deadline in order to ensure timely billing. So that was an important discussion, and Lindsay had a lot of input on the timing for the meter reading. Most of their time was spent in really kind of digging down into the more, I would say, technical side of Cassell. Mm-hmm. And also, she had suggestions for Joanne, such as, how just a basic process for entering, accounts payable information, and so that it would mirror Lindsay's process at our unfortunately, Lindsay's not here yet, or I'd
Okay.
have her speak directly. But
Yeah, can we just have, when she's here, if we could just come back to that in case she has anything to add, I would appreciate that, and
Yeah.
possibly even, just check in with Joanne as well.
Sounds good. And an update on the
Yeah.
Cassell training. Joanne and I have both attended 2 remote trainings.
Cassell is
Yesterday-
our accounting software,
Billing.
billing software. Thank you.
And yesterday and last Thursday. And we have one more scheduled.
Great.
Yes. So very productive, great trainer. So we've got some great training occurring at this point. So, it's been implemented. AJ, shall I move on?
yes,
Here's your topic. Bless you.
Okay, item C, discuss forced main flushing. So that has yet to be scheduled, and I think that it is a important exercise, but I don't think that it is the problem with the pumps that has been causing them to malfunction out at the mobile home estates. What we've discovered is that there are 2 controls that operate the lift station. One is a float mechanism, and there's 4 floats in that setup. There's a low float, and then 2 intermittent floats, and then a high water float. And there is a pressure transducer, so it's electronic and it works under water pressure and it gives you a level. The pressure transducer has a significant delay in its response time, and so it allows the lift station to pump dry. And what that does is it takes the pressure that the pump is under at about 100 psi, and it drops it to 0 instantaneously. And so the vendor who provided the pumps to us says, in his opinion, that that's what's causing the problem. So we have switched the operation of both of our lift stations that were constructed in the capital improvement projects. That's the Mobile Home Estates lift station and the Wagon Wheel lift station over to float operation only. And however, though, we did discover that when there's a power outage, it automatically switches back. And so we are observing them very vigilantly in order to prevent any further damage to the pumps.
Right.
And we've also raised the level on the pressure transducer low level so that even if it is responding slowly, it will not drain the lift station by the time it does communicate the shut-off to the control panel. So there's some stuff that's yet to be determined there in terms of what the problem is, but at least we have a pretty good idea at this point, and we have a corrective measure for it. So
Is this delay, is this a software problem or?
they don't know. They don't know. There's an air tube that goes from the control box down to the pressure transducer, which allows atmosphere into the mechanism. And we think that there's some kind of delay there in the response. But we have the same pressure transducers in operation at Aspen Lift Station and Stables.
With no problem.
With no problem. So it's not clear, but Brad is aware of it. He's working with Barry and myself. And the important thing is that we're not using the pressure transducer because it's malfunctioning on both lift stations.
So this main flushing was a discussion you were having about
Possible problems that might be occurring, and it is something that we will do at our earliest opportunity. We need to do it, and we will. And so, the warming weather will help us in terms of just conducting the exercise. But
so you said some of the pumps went dry. Did you have to replace some pumps?
We had to rebuild. Actually, we've had 4 failures out there.
Wow.
It started probably about a year ago. One of the pump shafts bent, the bearings went out, and ABS, who's the pump manufacturer, replaced it at no cost. It was just out of warranty, was about 13 months old. And then we had that pump rebuilt, and that was about $3,300 to have it rebuilt.
Wow.
So we had a backup pump. Then we continued to get failures. And so there were 3 more failures at the lift station with these pumps. The bearings would go out on them. And so it's been extremely frustrating. But at least at this point, and each time we have a failure, we call the vendor, the representative of ABS, and the company that provided the pumps and the control panel. And he's been fairly thorough, and he's been down here probably 4 times, 4 or 5 times, to try to understand and help us understand what the problem is.
What kind of effect does this have on the public out there?
None.
None.
In terms of service interruption, no. Yeah, we've been very fortunate in that regard. We had to scramble on the last failure because one of we had a failure. That pump went to the repair shop, which is a certified ABS repair shop, and that took quite a bit of time for them to make a determination. ABS wants to help, but they don't want to do more than they should, and so that pump has been sitting stagnant, waiting for ABS to decide what they're going to offer. I asked them to just replace all of the parts, and we would take care of the labor, and so there's still some issues there. So while that pump was at the repair shop, we had 2 more pumps have seal failures, which is not catastrophic, but it does indicate that the pump needs to be taken apart. So I took them up. I took one up on either side of some training that I had up there, some human resource training, and then I picked one up. So we got it worked out, and both of the pumps are in operation at this point.
We've been unlucky out there, haven't we?
It's been
Really?
very...
Is it possible there is a design flaw that was causing the...
Well, that was one of the first things we looked at. So Brad reran all of the numbers,
Right.
all the friction loss, all the elevations, and the pumps are the right pumps. So we think now that we understand it because we've seen it. We go out.
Okay, so the pumps are the right pumps. Installation.
There were.
And I'm talking design, not the actual, physical installation. Is what the pump connects to and all that also been?
There have been some other issues related to a gasket that is installed on the pumps, and when it drops down, it engages into a discharge plate, and that rubber gasket has been leaking intermittently as well. We discovered, actually, Justin DeBon in a confined space entrance into the lift station, discovered that the 2 plates weren't meshing perfectly. So then we made a modification, and that helped lock it down. We made ABS and the vendor aware of that. That's minor. The gasket leaking is minor in comparison to the pumping the facility dry. So I think Brad could probably say more about it, but from what I understand, Brad has rerun all of the numbers and is satisfied that we have the correct pumps, and the installation looks like it's done correctly to me. And the engineer who represents Falcon Environmental and ABS, who provided the equipment to us, has been out and inspected it, as I'd said, at least 4 times.
A gremlin.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
So that's, what's happening with that station, and the force main flushing is yet to be scheduled. Are there any other questions?
Well, how will that impact people?
I don't think that there'll be any service interruption. We can operate for approximately 12 hours without any pumping there. So there should not be a service interruption. All right, item D, discuss remote operating capabilities and use of personal computers for control from home. So I did some research. I got information from Timberline Electric and Control. They directed me to the logmein.com web page that discusses the protocols and the security levels that are in place for protecting our telemetry from remote access from someone who was not authorized to access. In addition to that, I talked to our IT guy, Harry, from WSB, and for the time being, we have decided that there will be only one operator that will access remotely if necessary. That will be Justin DeBond. Harry wanted a certain protocol on the password at his residence, so he implemented that, and in addition to that, he does not allow his iPad to store the password. So you have to type it in every time, and in addition to that, we are changing the password on a weekly basis until we get a policy developed